Hi, I'm Robi Abera, and this is Fernanda, Jara, and we're teen science scholars here at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
If you guys haven't heard of this spectacular event occurring August 21st, 2017, there's going to be a total solar eclipse crossing the mainland U.S.
We made an informational video to help you learn and prepare for this once-in-a-lifetime event. Solar eclipses are a phenomena that have been captivating society since the beginning of humanity. Ancient societies from the Chinese to the Aboriginals, the Aztecs, and even the Vikings have created a variety of myths and legends to explain this eerie and mesmerizing event. So we asked Mark Misch and Dimitri Klebe to explain the actual science of eclipses.
A solar eclipse happens when the moon is in the middle, in between the sun and the earth. So the moon casts a shadow on the earth, and that shadow moves across the earth. And if you're in the right place at the right time, you can see the moon, the disk of the moon, completely blocking out the sun. And that's what a total solar eclipse is.
But how is this possible? Well, that's because of the coincidence of the relative size and distance of the sun and moon.
The moon is about 400 times smaller than the sun, the diameter, but it's also about 400 times closer. So they look about the same size on the sky.
Because of this, during a total solar eclipse, we are able to see the sun's disk perfectly covered while the corona becomes visible. But the moon is moving further away from the earth due to ocean tides. So only in this day and age will we be able to see and experience a total solar eclipse as we do now. There are 3 different kinds of solar eclipses: a total, partial, and annular solar eclipse.
A total eclipse, and that's when the disk of the moon completely blocks out the disk of the sun. And when that happens, you see the glorious corona around the sun.
This occurs in the darkest part of the shadow, also known as the umbra.
A partial eclipse is when the moon kind of gets in your line of sight, so it partially blocks what the circle of the sun is. So you see a little bite taken out by the moon.
This occurs in the lighter part of the shadow, also known as the penumbra.
The third type of eclipse is what's called an annular eclipse, and that happens because the distance between the Earth and the moon is not always the same. The moon has an elliptical orbit, so sometimes it's a little closer, sometimes it's a little farther away. And if the Earth, sun, and moon are all lined up for an eclipse, but the moon is a little farther away from the Earth, then it's too small to completely cover up the sun. So you see the edge of the sun shining through.
We know that the moon makes a full revolution around the Earth every 28 days. So why don't we get an eclipse every month?
The moon goes around the Earth in a plane that's a little bit different than the plane of the Earth going around the sun. Now, we all learned in geometry when we were in school that 2 planes intersect at a line, and only when the moon is on that line can we actually have an eclipse. So the timing has to be just right, where the moon is crossing that line of nodes, as we call it, the intersection of those 2 planes, right at the time in which it's between us and the sun.
And the times that the sun, moon, and earth do align often falls over the ocean, leaving only a 30% chance of it falling over land. That's why on August 21st, 2017, millions of people will be traveling to see the solar eclipse. For the first time in 99 years, there's going to be an eclipse that will cross the United States, from Oregon to South Carolina.
So if you're lucky enough to live on the path of totality or travel to the path of totality, you'll see a spectacular sight, one of the grandest sights in the natural world. But everybody, even if you don't travel, everybody in the mainland US will see at least a partial eclipse. So it's worthwhile, even if you're not on the path of totality, and even if you are not planning to travel there, it's worthwhile to get yourself a pair of eclipse glasses or to make yourself a pinhole camera and to follow the path, follow the eclipse from where you are.
A solar eclipse's glory isn't only in totality and in the corona. There's much more to look for approaching, during, and after totality.
When you look up at the sun, you'll start to see the edge of the moon start to cover up the sun. And then over the course of about an hour and a half, you'll see more and more of the sun covered up. And then all of a sudden, when the moon completely covers up the sun, then you can take off your eclipse glasses and you'll see the glorious corona. And that will only last about 2.5 minutes. Then when you start to see the sun coming out from behind the moon, then you'll have to put your eclipse glasses back on. But then it'll be another hour and a half of partial eclipse when you'll see the moon still moving across the disk of the sun.
As we approach totality, it is very important that everyone has their glasses on as we're starting to watch the moon cover up the sun. And when it gets very, very close to that moment where it's getting into totality, we're going to see a thing called the diamond ring effect, where the last part of the sun's light, direct image light, is still coming to your eye and it'll look like a diamond ring. Once that disappears, you can then take off your glasses. And at that point, you might actually see another thing called Bailey's beads. And those are things where you're still getting some light making it through the craters around the limb of the moon. And there'll be a little bit of bright spots, but it'll be okay to have no glasses on to look at that, because shortly after that, it's going into totality there. During totality, you want to sit there and enjoy all the sights around you, from looking at the corona to looking at the horizon to see what's going on there, to listening to what the animals are doing, to see what the wind and the temperature is doing. Enjoy the experience.
Here in Denver, we won't be getting a total solar eclipse, but that doesn't mean we'll be left out of the event.
Denver will experience a partial solar eclipse with about 91% of the sun's disk covered by the moon.
Here are some tips on how to watch the eclipse safely.
So looking at the sun without protection has real consequences. Whether it's with your naked eye or with a telescope or pair of binoculars, you can do real damage to your eye and to the cornea of your eye in particular, and it can actually cause your cornea to burn. So having safe solar telescope or safe solar viewing equipment is of the utmost importance when viewing this eclipse. So probably the safest and easiest way to view the solar eclipse are with eclipse viewing glasses or solar viewing glasses, and they come in a couple different materials. You may also see them as just an eclipse viewer you can hold in front of your eyes. Another way to view the sun is with a pinhole projector. This one here is from NASA, but you can make these easily at home. What this will do is, as you point it towards the sun, it will project the image of the sun downward onto another surface. SunSpotter like this uses a series of mirrors and lenses to be able to create an image of the sun. The advantage of this is that you get a little bit more magnification, meaning you get more detail on the sun. You can also do this with a refracting telescope or an old pair of binoculars and have it project back on a surface. One thing to be careful with these though is that you don't put your eye directly up to it and look at the sun. You want to make sure you project this on a wall, a box, or a piece of white paper even.
Eclipses are one of the most amazing natural sights there are. They're rare, they're fleeting, they only last a few minutes. We're lucky to see eclipses at all. If you were on another planet, around another star, you might have a moon, you might have the moon passing in front of your star, but it's very unlikely that the moon would exactly cover up the disk of the sun. So we're lucky to see it.
So go plan your trip today with family and friends so you don't miss out on the solar eclipse.
And don't forget your eclipse gear.